Patrick, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure.
We're going to talk about something that's important but is often overlooked, and that's the importance of governance when it comes to helping nonprofits and charities succeed. From your perspective, tell me about your perspective and your work in governance and helping organizations get set up.
I think governance it's something that is very important. We don't seem to see how important it is until something bad happens. When something bad happens, that's when we know, okay, do we have policies about this? Do we have somebody in charge of this? So that's why whenever I work with non-for-profit, I always, especially at the beginning, make sure that they put everything in place in terms of government. Who's doing what, when, how, and what are the texts that are governing the non-for-profit. Because, I've worked in charities and non-for-profit for over 20 years. I have seen sometimes things go sideways, and so we always go back to the text. So what does the text say? Did we take notes? Did we do a report about it? So all those things need to be checked so that things can go right. Where everything is smooth, going right, we don't see the importance of governance, but it's until when something goes wrong that we need to go back and see what the text say and who's doing what, who's responsible or what. So that's why for me governance is really, really important.
Do you ever encounter people when it comes to governance that say, we'll get to that later, we just need to get started, we just need to get going? What is your advice to...
All the time.
What is your advice to people that are in that situation?
I work with non-for-profit organizations here in Canada and abroad. And people who are so excited about the idea, they say, okay, let's start right now and apply for grants right now. I always say to them, no, don't go so fast. You need to put the foundation in place. And the foundation is the governance, because even when, I tell them all the time, when you apply for a grant, they're going to see who, do you have text, do you have bylaws, are you registered, do you take notes, during the meetings? All those things need to be in place before you can start running. So that's why I always tell them, give it time, because you cannot start something right now and expect to, it's like even a human being, a baby that is born right now, don't expect the baby to run. So we need some foundation, we need some text in place, we need to know who's doing what, when, and all those things are very important, so that when the real work start coming, it won't go only to one person doing everything. So that's why, I always tell people to be patient in any business, even for-profit business. The foundation is key, and you need to put everything in place. You need to have the foundation right before you can start doing anything.
But you talk about governance, and you're talking a little bit about division of roles and responsibilities for the people inside the organization. How much of it is teaching people that want to run an organization that there is a right way to do things, and I don't want to say a wrong way, but maybe there's a better way to do things? How much of your work involves teaching organizations that have already maybe made some of these mistakes and then course correcting for them?
Oh, knowledge is key. Knowledge is key. Every time I work with a startup, non-for-profit, I always share my story, how I got started in that sector, what I've learned, and what have been the mistakes of people are making. So some of them just want to start running right away, and I tell them, no, you need to put things in place. You have to have partners, you have to have a plan. All those things, they need time. So that's why I spend a lot of time with them teaching. And with all the 20 years I've been working on non-for-profit, I have lots of templates people can use. And I always tell them, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Somebody has done it, you can just customize what is already there. So a lot of time at the beginning, it's about teaching, it's about let them know that things are different. I have cases of clients, people I work with, they were very, very successful in their home country, and then when they come here, they want to do things the same way they were running them back home. And at first I said, no, it doesn't work that way. And some of them don't even listen. They say, no, I know what I'm talking about. So I always give them space But what happens, they always come back to me and saying, you were right.
But how many nonprofits or charities that get started, they view this as sort of a burden? You're getting in the way. We just want to get on to doing the good work. And so how do you navigate that with the leadership team just to convince them that this stuff is really important? Like, is there a couple of lessons that you can share this is why it's so important to get this right?
Yeah, and that's why it's very key to share my story, because I made tons of mistakes, a lot of them. And when I see them making the same mistakes, I always say, I've been there, I've done that, and this has been the results. If you listen to me, I can share my experience, and if I don't know, I know where to go to get the information. And sometimes people need to learn by themselves. Once they make the mistakes and see how long it takes for them to learn, that's when they start listening. Some others, they listen, they apply themselves right away. It depends on people, it depends on a personal experience, but once again, knowledge is key. Knowledge and experience are very key. That's what I'm sharing with the people I work with. When
you find that when you get approached by an executive director or a startup that says, hey, can you help us go through this governance process? What is step one for them? Like what is let's break it down to the very, very basic thing. What is the most basic thing that you start to teach people?
I always ask, the very first question I ask them is, what do you have? Because when they are already established, they have done some things. What do they have? So I go through what they have. Do they have bylaws? Do they have regulations? Do they have policies? Do they have an accountant? So I check what they have and see what is missing. So we start working on what is missing. And sometimes people start to work on the field without doing the governance first. So they go out and then do project, they run and they do fundraising, and then when I meet them, they have done some work already, but now they need help. But I always tell them, now you need to slow down a little bit. You've done some work, now you need my help, but you need to slow down. Let's see what you have. Let's see what you need. Let's see what we can put in place. Let's have a plan. Because most of people, they just start running. And it's very key to see what you have, see what you don't have. Let's build it and let's plan together and make it step by step.
So let's say that somebody's been running, they've been operating, and maybe they don't have everything in place, and you come in. How hard is it for them after the fact to reverse engineer some of the policies and procedures they would have needed in the first place? Is it harder to do it at the beginning? Is it harder to do it at the middle? Or is it the same, it just needs to be done?
It needs to be done. It needs to be done. But my experience has been that most of the people who start running, most of the time they use their own funds, their own resources. And then once they see that they cannot go anymore, bank account is empty, and then say, oh, we need help. We need help. So for me, I had to explain to them, yes, you need help. Yes, we can go and look for those funds. But once the funds are coming, they won't pay you back the money that you paid already. Right. So for them, it's a matter of knowledge. It's a matter of knowing that when you go to apply for grants, they have specific procedures on how that money can be used. And sometimes it takes a while for them to explain to them, you have used your own money, you invested in your charity, you invested in your non-for-profit. Yeah, there are lessons that you learned, but let's pedal back and let's do it the right way. Yeah. Explain to them that because they're used to call the shots, you need to delegate.
Tell me about your personal experience in terms of how did you make the mistakes that you made and what did you learn from them?
I bumped into this work by accident, really, because my passion has been media for a long time. I wanted to work in radio back home in Burundi. When I came here, when I came here to Canada, I wanted to do radio. So that was my passion. So I bumped into a really small community French-speaking radio. And then I started volunteering there. It was just small. They were broadcasting 3 months out of the year. They didn't have the license to work. So at that time, I started working in the office. What do you need? Do you need any translation, French, English? Do you need anything? So And the project manager at that time, he was at the end of his contract. At the end of his contract, he was let go because there was no money. So because I was around all the time, people saw me doing any work that was needed. They asked me, "Can you be the project manager of this radio? We're gonna teach you."
So was the radio station a nonprofit?
It was a it was a non-for-profit. And so once I got in there, I had no clue how to run the things. So thank God I had a mentor who showed me what to do. He said, okay, this is how you run. They put him into training, and I got to know about governance, about applying for grants, and then at the end of that sessions, after 6 months, I applied for two grants, and we got the money, and I was paid from the grants I applied for. And that experience was like, it opened my eyes, and people in the community, I don't know how they knew about it. They said, "Hey, I have this idea, can you help me?" I started helping people in the community from what I learned at the radio station. A year later, I got a job at a different non-for-profit, and then still working, and then they start doing events during Black History Month, and they say, "Hey, I can help writing grants for the Black History Month," and they start, right? And people in the community start, "Hey, I have this project." So for years, I was helping people from what I learned at the radio station at this not-for-profit, helping them, and they start doing events, they start doing festivals. Some of them were doing work overseas.
But I want to, let me interrupt you there for a second. I want to dig a little bit deeper on the work that you were doing with the nonprofits here, and you were successful at raising money through grant applications.
Yes.
How important was having the governance right in the nonprofits to allowing you to receive the grant money? Or was it just a great idea?
Oh, it was having the governance was key, because once we applied, we have everything in place. And then this is what I was sharing a bit about the experience, because once I was successful after 2 years, I said, you know what? I did it for the radio, I can do it for myself. So I started my own projects just by myself, with nobody, with no governance, nothing. After 9 months, I had to stop. I had to stop because it was impossible. It was impossible because I thought we got the grants because of my work, but my work was on top of a team, on top of work that was done 10 years prior, that was, put the foundation in place. So whenever we went to knock on the doors, we had everything in place. Until I started my own and make those huge mistakes, I didn't understand the importance of having a governance, of having text, having a team, knowing how to delegate. I thought I was Superman. And those mistakes made me realize that I need to learn. So I went back to work, I applied for a job, I went back to work, but this time I said, okay, I'm gonna work, but I'm gonna learn at the same time. So I went through intensive training for over the years on how to run organizations, so how about leadership, about governance, about delegating, about I wanted to know why I didn't succeed. I wanted to know for real why I didn't succeed. Part of it was me, part of it was not knowing, and then I'm taking that experience now, sharing with people I'm working with right now.
How much of that learning and that experience has translated over to the work you're doing? You mentioned you're involved in nonprofit basketball in Burundi. How much of what you've learned here has translated over into the basketball work that you're doing?
Oh yes, I'm doing some basketball projects that came about in 2019 when I was involved with reporting on the Raptors. They won, and then the media attention was on me because I was among the few French-speaking people that was following the Raptors that year. So I got these connections with somebody who has a foundation in the United States that goes to Africa, do camps and for kids, and then the best of them, he gave them access to scholarship. So I said, hey, how about bring it to Burundi? So that's how we started. So I brought him to Burundi. It was supposed to be a one-time deal. We do a camp, and then he will work on getting them scholarship. But once I came back, I got a chance, really an opportunity of a lifetime, to meet Masai Ujiri of the Toronto Raptors, and I asked him how he ran Giants of Africa. We met for about an hour. He gave me everything. I mean, thank God I had a notepad. I took notes on how to do things properly. And from that and all the experience, I started doing my own projects. We set up a basketball academy, and now we have one kid who got a scholarship who plays in the States. And now I'm involved into basketball world, both in Africa and in Canada as well.
I want to come back to sort of the work that you do with on the governance side. When people say, well, maybe I have a problem, maybe I don't know that I have a problem with governance inside my organization. Are there any sort of telltale signs that people can say, how do we as nonprofit leaders figure out that we need to work on our governance?
Most of the time, they find it when they are denied of a grant application, because when you apply for a grant, there's a checklist of things that you need to have in place, and most of people who are denied, I encourage them to ask, why didn't you get it? Sometimes it's just because of competition, because so many people are applying for the same grant. Some other time it's because you don't have everything you need to have in terms of governance to qualify for that grant. So I always tell them, go and ask, and let them know that you want to improve. Now, from the feedback they get from people who have grants, they know what to work for. And some other time it's during the application itself, once we see what they ask. So I always say, okay, do you have this? Do you have this? And some of them, they don't. And then I said, I think we should stop, apply for this grant, and work on this piece they are asking for. So that's how we are able to work on the things that they needed. And then once they are ready, we go back and apply for grants. And sometimes I always say, try to divide the work, because yes, there is work that needs to be done in terms of governance, in terms of text, in terms of policies, but there's also work that needs to be done on the ground. So you cannot stop the work that you're doing on the ground until this is right. How about we do both of them at the same time? If you have people you are helping on the ground, keep helping. Now take some data, show that you're working on the ground, but at the same time, I'm going to help you work on the foundation, which is the governance, the text, so that when these two grow at the same times, when we're ready, then we can go back and apply for those grants.
So where does the board fit into all of this? Because, if you're the board of a nonprofit that has allowed governance to suffer, is also the same board that has to step up and fix the problem. How are you with dealing with the boards or inspiring the boards to make the changes they need to be successful?
Oh, it starts with the board, because that's the leadership. That's the leadership. And sometimes, especially for startups, the person with the vision ended up doing the entire work that needs to be done. That's why I always tell them, choose people who share your vision. Because if you have a board team, and you are the only one doing the work, something's missing. So I always tell them, if you have a vision, you put together, a board of directors, choose people who will give their time. Choose people who share your vision, who wants to be involved, and because it start there. And talking about knowledge, I always have to tell them that board members are volunteers. So they are not getting paid. There's no salary. They are there because they want to help. They are there because they want to have an impact in the community. And sometimes it's like, oh, do you mean you're gonna do all this work for free? I said, yeah, because you want something to change. This is the best way to get involved. Everything starts with the leadership. And they have to embrace that journey of having the governance in place, because they are accountable to whenever something happens, they'll be the one responding. And I have to explain to them that there's work, especially at the beginning when there is no funding. You be the one working. You do everything. You be board member. You be coordinator. You be fundraising manager. You do everything. So that part needs to be understood, and that's part of the work I do to explain to them what they need to do.
How do you help navigate maybe a more established organization that says, yeah, but these board members have been here for the last 10, 12, 15 years. We know we love them. They've been a great part of the community, but maybe they need a different composition of board members. How do you navigate that? That's kind of a tricky.
It is tricky. It is tricky. I always come back to basketball. we talk about the Raptors. They had an amazing coach, Dwayne Casey. He was amazing developing those young players, and he brought them to a place where they could succeed, get to Eastern Conference Finals, but there was something missing for them to go to the championship level. They had to change the coach. And he was a nice guy. He did the work for many years. So they changed the coach. We got lucky, we got Kawhi. But that change of leadership, that change of culture, that change of a new voice, it's very important. So I always explain to them, you got this far with the work that needs to be done, and you did it. But for you to go to the next level, it's going to take something different. Could be different people, different ideas, but that change needs to happen. They could be part of the board, or they can change position, but to go to the next level, something needs to change.
So what do you know, let's assume that you're working with a nonprofit or a charity that has all of the governance in place. What advantages do you think that provides them?
They have the right foundation. So the advantage is now they are ready to expand, because it's hard to expand when you don't have the resources. Once the resources are in place, when it comes to expanding, you are expanding on the right foundation.
So I guess the last thought or last question for me is, you know, budgets are tight in the nonprofit community. People are already overworked. Governance just seems like, if it's not already in place, it just seems like another thing that needs to be done. Where do you rank it in terms of the order of importance when it comes time to, there's competing priorities and competing agendas? You know, I think I know where you're going to answer, but where do you see the priorities?
It's very important to have governance in place, but also it's very important to think outside of the box, because especially now there are so many resources. Now every time I work with startups and non-for-profit, I always say, don't always think about money. Money can help, but there are so many other resources that you can tap into that are not money. Example, if you need some work to be done, have you thought about getting interns? There are so many programs in universities and college that they want students to get experience. And having experience in non-for-profit world, it's amazing because they got to work with meaningful work, making change in the community. And sometimes they think, oh, okay, I didn't know you could do that. I had a friend who started his non-for-profit only with interns, but they did so good that they end up being hired, and the work proved that they can receive grants. And sometimes governance, yes, but we need to really have that vision and think outside of the box, and look if you can have partners.
I think it's what it strikes of interest to me is that you can seek out partnerships on things like governance as well.
Yes.
Partnerships don't just have to be the traditional way we think about organizations working together. They can work below the line.
Yes, yeah. You can do that, and if there are already established organization that has been doing the work for a while, people trust them. Hey, how about working with them? Yeah.
So I don't want to summarize everything you've said into a couple of sentences, but if you're starting out, get the governance piece right.
Yes.
If you're in the middle of it and you don't have your governance correct, get it correct, because that's the only way you're going to accelerate your growth, which will accomplish obviously the work that you want to do in your community.
Yes, correct.
Fair assessment?
You were listening.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you so much, Greg.